Welcome to our webinar today. It's January 28th, 2016. And as I promised, today we're going to be talking about setting up a system for your translation business. I really appreciate you coming out, whether you're here live with us right now or you're listening to this after the fact. I think you're going to get a lot out of this session. I do want to say I've opened up a Q&A. Oh, absolutely. Okay, got it. Which is working. All right, great. I'm glad that we have a couple people letting me know that they can hear me. So I do have a question panel in the presentation. So if you guys have any questions that come up as I'm talking, go ahead and write them there and I'll address them either while I'm talking or afterwards. So we'll just kind of do this informally for those that are here live. And if you are listening to this recorded and you have questions, go ahead and put them in the comments below and I'll be able to respond to those. So thank you again so much. And without any further ado, let me share my presentation with you. Here we go. Well, let's start at the beginning. All right, so we're going to be talking about building your system for success. And, you know, I work in a home office and my cat Whiskers likes to join me. So I apologize for my assistant here. All right, well, let's just get started with our content. So first, we want to talk about, today we're going to talk about three major things. One is what it means to be I made up this word, a linguapreneur, but really I just want to talk about being an entrepreneur because that's essentially what you are as a freelance linguist. Secondly, we're going to talk about why do you need a system? And third, what you should consider when establishing a workflow for how you work. So the first thing to talk about is being an entrepreneur. And if you are not an employee of a company, you are your own company. And I think this gets missed with a lot of linguists because, you know, we get hired by a lot of agencies who engage with us as suppliers. And a lot of times it feels like you work for that company. But if they're paying you as a 1099, which is as a contract employee, you're your own company. And what that means is you get to define your own system and your own way of doing things. And the other thing is you don't have an obligation to them. And so you have the ability to go and find your own other clients and build up your own little business. So you're essentially a company. Maybe you're a company of one person that does everything, and that's okay. I found this definition of an entrepreneur on the internet, and it said that an entrepreneur is a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses taking on greater than normal financial risks in order to do so, which I thought was kind of an interesting take on being an entrepreneur. Since I think, you know, the greater the normal financial risk, sometimes you feel like, what, am I doing that? But really, if you're not an employee of a company, you are taking a little more risk on. You're not covered under things like their insurance. You don't get the benefits from being an employee. But again, you do get the benefit of being your own business. And there are a lot of benefits that come to that. And I really feel like I was talking in my mastermind yesterday about that. We feel like this country is becoming more and more a country of entrepreneurs, which I think is exciting. I think, you know, running your own business is not only rewarding mentally, but I think it can be kind of in a weird way a spiritual practice because it helps you get to know yourself as a person and what you have to offer the world. Anyway, that's my woo-woo moment of the presentation, but I'm excited about, you know, what this means to, you know, our society. So anyway, welcome to the world of being an entrepreneur. I don't know if you thought of yourself as that before, but even if you're just doing this on the side part-time, it is your own thing. And so I think it's important to have a system so that as you're working with clients, you're satisfying your clients, because that's a big part of being your own company, is customer service. So those clients come back more and more. So why do you need a system? So I just kind of hinted at a couple of reasons. Maybe I'm going to check back into the chat here. Do you guys have any thoughts about why you need a system for being an entrepreneur and running projects? So if you have thoughts, go ahead and put them in the questions tab. Otherwise, I'm going to just go with my ideas, and you may think of some as I'm talking. So the first reason, as I mentioned already, is to delight your clients. And I'll explain, there's actually a pattern for this, and I'll explain that in a minute. But to delight your clients. And secondly is build your own confidence for quality deliverables. If you have kind of a pattern for the way you accept work, do the work, deliver the work, it gives you that high quality confidence that you're going to deliver good work or your best work. I want to add something to this too, and that is about just stress, because I think one of the beliefs we have in this industry is it's very stressful. Because we are working with deadlines and budgets and a lot of external factors that we don't have any control over. The projects sometimes come in all shapes and sizes, and it's hard to kind of sort that out. But I think, most projects do have sort of similarities that you can glean and put into a system that you have designed. And one of the reasons, which I didn't put here, but I just thought of, is it really helps you put a pattern in place to eliminate stress in your life. Part of, I think, why we feel so much stress as, entrepreneurs, as freelancers, is because, we're trying to do everything for everyone. And I am speaking from experience, because the first 4 years of my business, I tried to do that, and it was not profitable and very stressful. And so I've started putting some process in place in my company, and it's made a huge difference in my bottom line, as well as my stress, just my family life, my stress level. And part of that is when you're limiting those, I read this recently, when you're limiting those inputs into your life, it helps you eliminate stress. Like, as human beings, we get so many messages and so many inputs all day long, and no wonder our society is so stressed out all the time. But if, things like, even if you say, you know what, I can go to the mall and there's a million stores in there, and it's a lot of input. And if you just say, I'm only going to shop at this store, then it cuts out a lot of stress in your life. And so anyway, I don't know if you're following me there, but I think, one thing a system is going to do is just improve your life in general, not just your business, but your confidence, your stress level, your ability to deliver, your ability to handle the projects, and, the way you can do that. So that is a big reason. Another thing is, you can remove awkward money conversations. Now, how huge is that? Because I know that's one big awkward moment when you're doing projects, that you have to ask, okay, well, how much does this pay? And at the end, it's like, well, when am I going to get paid? And these are not always comfortable things to ask clients, especially new clients you've never worked with before. So if you run a system and you have a way of, and we've actually been doing that in our business on both sides, so that, when you're accepting a project from us, we give you a purchase order. We say, this is how much this project pays. There's some negotiation, but there should, in the end, be an understanding between, the linguists and the project manager, what that's going to pay. So that happens. And if it's not happening with your customers, you need to make that happen so that you don't run into these awkward money conversations. You should know exactly what to expect when you take on a project. And so we're going to talk about how to do that. But again, this builds into eliminating stress, making your work more enjoyable, increasing your confidence, all of these things that are just going to help your soul, not just your business. one thing with the system, you want to really build in places for feedback so that you can continue to learn and improve and become better as a linguist. And lastly, the one I thought of was, it feels empowering when you have, again, it feeds back to that confidence level and being empowered, that you know what you can take on and you know what to say no to. If there's something that comes your way that just doesn't fit your system, and that's the best feeling in the world, when you get to a point in your practice, in your business, where you can say, you know what, I looked at this project and I can't fill this with my, limits, my skills, my stress, my time. And so my technical abilities, things like that. And so when you start being able to say no to projects, it feels so good, because there's another project around the corner that is going to be a perfect fit for you. And so, I think having a system in place will help you kind of weed that out a lot easier. Does anybody else have thoughts about that? I'm going to check in with you real quick. I don't see any other questions or comments here. Looks good. All right, cool. So I guess you liked my my reasons, but if you think of more, I'd love to hear. Sorry, we've got to go through this again. Okay, so let's talk about a workflow. Now, this is kind of a general workflow, but when I'm talking about a workflow, I mean from the second you engage, all of your engagements with the client. Okay, so when you have a new client, should be a way that you, what we call onboard with that client, meaning set up a system with that client specifically. There's a lot of things, when the first time you work with somebody, there's some things that you got to put in place. Again, to eliminate those awkward moments later, it's better to have these upfront conversations. And that's what we call onboarding with your client. So once you have the client in place and things onboarded with them, then there should be a workflow for just the starting of the project, or receiving a project and understanding. And there might be some checklists you can put together. And we're going to talk about how to do that. So starting a project, delivering a project. As you can see, these are all phases where you might have some interaction with your client. Collecting the payment for your project. And lastly, which is really important, is getting feedback, which, let me say, as somebody who works with linguists every day, every week, I rarely get a linguist that asks me for feedback on how they did. Occasionally we do, but rarely I do. So I think that's a very important step in the workflow. So we're going to go one by one and go through these stages, but your workflow may be different than this. You may get more specific than this. You may get more broad than this. So I'm just giving you sort of a framework that you can jump off from. So we talked about onboarding clients. Once you find a client, and that's a different lesson on finding clients. But once you find a client, what do you do? Well, contracts come up a lot, and sometimes this really surprises people. But I think as a business, as a company, you've got to have things in place to protect yourself and protect your relationship with the client. So one thing is a mutual NDA. Now, an NDA is a legal document called a non-disclosure agreement. If you don't have one of these are things you can Google. You don't have to hire an attorney. There are, or you can maybe take one that you've used or received before and change it a little bit. So you don't have to hire an attorney to put one of these together, but you should find a mutual NDA. And what this does is and make sure it's mutual, because what a lot of times your client will send you an NDA, which means this is an agreement that we're going to be sharing information with you that you aren't going to be sharing with anyone else, like competitors, especially as a company, as a supplier, you may be working with several clients that are competing with each other for the same business. And so you have to sign. It's good to have these signed so that you have an agreement and an assurance with your client that you're not going to be sharing that information. And make sure that you have some things in place to really ensure that you're creating that separation. But I suggest a mutual NDA, because then you're also getting your client to agree that they're not going to share information about you with other people and about your system and about what you do. And so I think it should go both ways, that you have this signed, and once it's signed, it means legally you're protected to discuss freely any information regarding your client's clients, and you're able to discuss things without being afraid that your client is going to, share anything that you don't want shared out in the world somewhere. So that is something to be aware of. It's very standard. Now, I didn't put on here a non-compete agreement. If you do get a non-compete agreement from a client, you need to probably review that really, really carefully, and possibly even have an attorney look at it, because really, as your own company, there shouldn't be any limitations to you quote competing. If you're an employee, it's kind of a different story. You may be asked to only work for that particular company and not for another company. But as a contractor, as a supplier, as your own company, you want to be able to make sure that you're not agreeing to limiting your own business. And I think, a lot of people just sign these contracts without really looking at them. And usually they're pretty generic. But I can tell you from my own experience that companies take these agreements very seriously. And so it's a good idea to make sure that you're looking those over. I did want to mention W-2 versus a 1099. So these might come up when you're onboarding with your client. They may say, hey, we're going to set you up as a W-2. Now, this is common, and there's kind of a whole discussion around W-2 versus 1099. If you're in Oregon, you can look at the BOLI website. In Washington, there's a Washington employment website. But I really highly recommend learning about W-2 versus 1099, because there are distinctions. W-2, though, essentially is you are an employee of the company. They're going to be taking taxes out of your paychecks. You're going to be receiving regular paychecks on their payroll cycle. You're covered under, you get some benefits, maybe limited benefits, but you should get some benefits, even if it's just being covered from your, on insurance. In Portland, actually in the whole state of Oregon, you get sick leave. In Washington, I think in the Seattle area, you get sick leave if you're a W-2. So there are things, it's definitely pay attention. It's beyond just how you get paid. There are some things that you should get as a W-2. So if you agree to work with a client as a W-2, understand that you are an employee for them and should be able to get some benefits. Now, with that said, if you're working from home, that doesn't mean you should throw out your system. It just means, it's how you're going to be set up to work with them. But I think it's becoming more and more common to work as 1099, which is another tax form. It means they won't be taking out taxes. And so they are going to engage with you as your own company, and will pay you. You need to invoice, and they will pay you according to your invoice. So again, I encourage you to Google those. And if you have further questions about those, I'd be happy to try to answer them. I'm no attorney, but I have some experience with these things, so I'm happy to answer what I can. But of course, if you want to be safe, it's always a good idea to have an attorney, at least some access to somebody, especially because you're your own business. And so you need to have that. Confidentiality, again, I kind of brought this up a little bit with the NDA, but pay close attention to the confidentiality requirements. One thing is, and again, I'm trying, in my own business to get away from using email, because email is about the least secure way to communicate. And so I see a lot of companies still sharing files and doing things over email, which email is easily hacked, and it could expose your client or your client's information if your email gets hacked. And so I recommend, if you do receive files via email, that those get saved somewhere securely and your email gets deleted right away. So you don't want to have files just in your inbox. Even if you can't see them, they're there, and a hacker could hack into your account and have access to all of that. And some of those, you know, I mean, depending on your clients, it could have pretty severe implications. So be conscious as you're developing your system of confidentiality, and try to protect your clients' assets. They'll appreciate that. And there's nothing worse than having a leak happen because of something that you were just ignorant about. And so be educated about it, you know, and definitely, you know, if they have a confidentiality agreement, read through it and pay attention to the requirements, because some of them do have requirements of deleting files, and you want to make sure you're doing that in the proper order. So those are some contracts that you might be, make sure that you have with your client before you start your first project with them. Another thing you want to do when you're setting up that arrangement with your client is have an agreement on your rate and how payments are going to happen. So that should happen up front. Don't start working on a project until you have an agreement. Again, this goes back to avoiding those awkward money conversations. So agree on the rate, be reasonable, you know, but also firm, you know, and it's a good idea as a company to have some rates that you offer for certain kind of tasks. I think it sets you up as a professional, you know, person when you've kind of thought that through. And so, but have that agreement up front, have that understanding up front, so that you don't run into surprises later. Okay, I'm going to check in on any questions. Looks like we're good. All right. Thanks, you guys. All right. So the next slide, I know I'm covering a lot pretty quickly, but we're recording this, so you'll be able to go back and look at it again. So the next stage in the workflow is receiving the new project. So you have this relationship set up, you've signed all the agreements, you've kind of done all your negotiating with your clients up front, and now you're ready for your first project. So I think it's a good idea to have a checklist that you kind of have either mentally or even write it down and have it available. It's always a good idea to write things down because it's easy to forget. But one thing, you know, and I don't work with enough linguists that do this, but one thing is when you receive a new project, the first thing you want to do is acknowledge that you received it. And, you know, as a professional linguist, the quicker you respond, the better. And I think a lot of people have their email on their smartphone, even if they're not home and available. I think it's great to, when linguists will get an email or a request for a project, be able to go into their smartphone and say, hey, got this request. I'll look at it in a couple hours when I'm home. It means a lot because you know that it's been received. It's not just out in cyberspace. So always acknowledge that you received that and try to do it within, you know, the first hour that the email came in, if not sooner. I've lost projects because we didn't get back. We didn't respond. You know, somebody responded in 5 minutes and I responded in 10 minutes. And, you know, the person who responded quicker got the project. So acknowledging is really important. The next thing is, you know, if once you get back to your desk, within the first couple of hours of receiving a new project, you want to confirm the understanding of the project. So reply to the project manager and say, okay, I see you're sending me this project. It looks like you want this document translated and you want me to use this specific memory to do it. And, you know, it gives you a chance to ask any questions. Do you also want, you know, trademarks translated, or do you want me to use a special tool or whatever? So, and what file format do you want this delivered? Do you want it delivered back in the Word doc format? Do you want it delivered in a, you know, cat tool format? So it's really good to have that understanding before later, you might even work on the project like over the weekend, but understand that a lot of the project managers aren't working over the weekend. So it's really good to go through, a receiving phase. Confirm the deadline and budget. Look and make sure that it's reasonable. And sometimes I think the budget can tell you a lot in the deadline about what is expected from the project. Say you get a 3,000 word review and they say this should take you a half hour. Well, that seems ridiculous. But at the same time, if you go back over the instructions the client sent, they say, oh, this is just a smoke testing or a sanity check or a high level review. We're just looking for this one issue. Oh, well, that you can do in a half hour. So before you react to, the word count versus the deadline and budget, make sure you understand what the deliverable is and what the assignment is. And then you can understand if that's something you could do. So, and a lot of times there's some negotiation about that. We'll do that the minute the project comes in. And it's a good idea not to just accept it, jump in, and then blow through their budget, which I think I see happen a lot. Understand these budgets are very firm because these have all been plotted out and planned out and worked out with, usually the end client. And so, it is kind of a big deal to go over the budget. And that's something to understand as a linguist. That comes up a lot. So you need to have that in place of how you handle that when you do need more budget. We'll talk about that in a bit. Another thing to do right when the project comes in is open all of the files that you're going to work on. I've had this happen where a linguist accepted a project, no problem, deadline, budget, no problem. But she went to work on the project the night before it was due the next morning and realized none of the files could open properly, and it had to be escalated to the project manager, and she wasn't able to meet the deadline, which was frustrating because she had had the files for almost a week. And so that could have easily been resolved and deadline met. So make sure the first day you get the assignment, one of the first things you do is just open all the files and make sure everything works. Then once you've confirmed that, then with confidence you can go and actually do the work in your own time. And also review the technical details. Make sure you have all the program, software set up, everything in place before you start. The one thing that's really important when you are receiving the project, and this has to do with the customer service I talked about, is let the client know what they can expect from you. So, hey, I received this request from you, and here's what you're going to get from me. And the cool thing about that is when you actually deliver it, you can summarize, here's what I said I would do, and now here's what I did. And they're going to be thrilled. So it's really a small thing that makes a huge, huge difference. So I'm going to check in on questions. Oh, okay. We have a couple questions I can look at. We'll take a break for questions here. So Regina asked a question, trying to work on English to Portuguese. How strong is the market demand? That is a great question. And Brazilian Portuguese is very strong. I think you have definitely a great language pair there. And, it's this kind of applies for any market, but if you think about all of the millions of websites that are created on a daily basis, there's so much content out there for online content. And then you think about all the people in Brazil or around the world who are Brazilian, who want to access to that content. So the question isn't really, is the market strong? Well, yes. I mean, obviously there are, not really sure how many people live in Brazil, but I know it's a lot of millions. So the question really is there of what is the content that you want to do? What is your specialty? And that we're going to do, actually I have some training coming up for that, that you would want to pay attention to. So Absolutely. It's a strong, strong market. It's usually one of the top languages when I look at who's looking at my content. Brazilian Portuguese is usually number one or two after English. But what the real question is what kind of content do you, Regina, want to work on? And that is where we want to build a market for you. So thanks for your question. And I think we'll get more into there's kind of a bigger answer to that, and we'll get more into that later. And Diana, who's also Portuguese, but she's from Portugal, was asking, do you know if we have to register with a state or city in order to be a business? You don't have to. You can. And it kind of depends. It depends on your city. It depends on your state. There's a lot of depends. But there are reasons to do that. If you want to protect things like the name of your business, if it's anything besides your name. But so there are reasons you want to do that. And it also depends on your clients. If you're working with direct clients, then it's a really good idea to do that. And I think it's not really that expensive to do in Oregon or Washington. And so working with direct clients, like that's the best, right? Because you get to charge what you want, and you know, it gives you sort of a little more flexibility. But of course, it depends on what you want in your business. So if you just want to work for agencies as a contractor, you do not have to legally register as a business. But if you want to work directly, a lot of companies do want to see a business number for you. So that's sort of a long and short of it. There are also things like insurance that you have to think about and legal stuff. But you know, one thing I would recommend is just start, without all of that stuff, and grow your business. And if it starts being like a full-time thing for you, then look into registering. You can always do it later. Cool. Awesome. Regina focuses on sustainability. Well, then I totally wholeheartedly agree. You're in a great market for that topic. And I'd love to work with you more directly on that. So, all right, let's keep going with our presentation. I love hearing from you guys too. Okay, so come up with your own checklist. What are things that you can do to receive the project, but understand by doing this process, instead of just, yeah, I'll do it as a message, but if you actually do, address a few things in that acceptance message, it gives your client that confidence that you're going to do it, and it gives you the opportunity later to summarize what you did for them, and they will love it. Okay, so deliver on time and on budget. Be conscious of the budget. I mentioned this before. You've got to respect the budget that they give you. Now, sometimes they may ask you for an estimate, and that's another thing you want to include in your quote system, is how are you going to estimate projects? And again, we'll do another lesson on that. But doing estimations is a big part of the work that we do. And so if a client has done this for you, like a lot of agencies will give you a budget from the project management, respect that budget, use that budget to understand the scope of the project. And if you get into it, now a lot of times there is reason to ask for more time. And usually it's because, like, for example, if you're doing a QA project, you may bump into an issue where there are a lot of bugs, and that takes a lot of time to log those reports. And so you may go back to your project manager and say, you know what, this is taking me more time because there are a lot more bugs than I think you realized. And they get to make that decision. But what you don't want to do, and I feel like I try to hammer this home all the time, is surprise your client and say, oh, guess what? I know this was a 2-hour task, but I actually spent 10 hours. Well, the risk of doing that is the client says, I don't have 10 hours to pay you. And then you've just volunteered 8 hours of your time, and nobody wants to do that. So that has to be an ongoing communication, ongoing negotiation. Do not be afraid. That is part of your job, is to have that level of communication. Every freelance linguist needs to have some tool to track their time. I use FreshBooks. I talk about FreshBooks a lot. It's a pretty cool cloud-based accounting tool, and it has a little timer that you can use to track your time. There's another one called Toggle, which I really like. It's really simple. The interface, these are things you can just download to your smartphone, and first thing you do when you start working is hit play, and it'll track your time. So absolutely have a tool so that you know exactly what you're spending on task. Sometimes I get invoices and I can tell they're using a time tracker, and it really, as a client for that linguist, it makes me feel like, wow, they're really professional, and they're charging me only what they do, which I really appreciate, and it makes me want to work with them again and again. Other linguists I can see will report whatever budget I give them, and which is fine, but I think you're missing that metric of kind of knowing how well you're doing. So really, to be a professional linguist, you need to have some tool for tracking your time. I'm just going to throw that out there. Also, be efficient. Don't go out of scope. I have a lot of linguists who do that. Like, I don't know if you've heard that saying, but when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I see a lot of translators jumping in and starting to translate a project, which really wasn't intended to be translated. It was only intended to be, reviewed or some, strange aspect. So you really have to pay attention to the instructions, the scope of the assignment, and you're going to be able to do this if you follow your checklist in step 1 and be able to have that confirmation with your client of what the scope is. Don't go outside of that scope. Ask questions if you need help. Don't be shy. It doesn't make you look bad. It makes you look like a professional when you ask questions. And lastly, do what you said you would do. I think this is the biggest thing. When you deliver your deliverable, do a little summary report. Hey, I QA'd this. I filed this many bugs, and confirm that, this is what I understood the assignment to be, and I did it. And so it really, again, it's a psychological thing maybe, but it'll make your client really have that confidence that the task got done properly. So that is a big one. Get familiar with tools. So there are a lot of tools that are going to help you do a great job. There are a ton out there, and I really strongly, if you're going to be doing this either on the side as what we call a side hustle, you would just want to do some translation and language work on the side, or if you want to do it full time, either way, you got to use the tools that exist to help you, kind of your cheats, right? To help you work efficiently and do a good job. There's a lot of computer aided translation tools out there. We've had a few webinars on some of the tools that are available, and we'll have more, of course, on this. We use WordBee, which is a cloud-based computer aided translation tool, and it has so many features. And what I really encourage linguists to do, if they're going to use our tool or any tool, is do a little research, get to know the features, and make sure that you're using them properly. Because these tools, what they do is help you. If you're translating, for example, they'll recommend translations from what's been stored in memory, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you're doing a translation. They will help do spell checks, grammar checks, all kinds of aids. But I think sometimes I see that a lot of my linguists don't use those aspects of the tool and aren't getting the most out of them, and so they're not working as efficiently as they could be. So use a tool, but understand the ins and outs. If you're going to be a professional translator, if you're going to be a linguist of any kind, you need to know about these tools. One simple thing is Microsoft Office proofreading tools. A lot of times it's a great idea just to throw a document into Word and see what comes up in the spell check, grammar check. It really, and they have this for most languages. Our webinar next month is going to be about proofreading. So we're going to go specifically through some of these tools. So if you're interested in that. Dictionaries, online help, just make sure that they're good sources, that they're, reputable, so that you know that you're getting good support. And of course, our best friend Google. I love it when like somebody takes on a job and you can tell they're a pro because they went and researched and said, you know what, I just found another document very similar to this. It's already been translated. Okay, if I use some of that. And it's awesome because, again, it helps you do a better job. It helps the client is thrilled because you've been proactive. You found something that is going to help you. So do not be afraid to do a little of this research as a linguist before you jump into the job. And you might have some other ideas, other tools, tricks, things like that. And I would love to hear from you either now or in the comments about, I think we should have that discussion for each other. Hey, I found this cool thing that helps with X, Y, or Z. I think it's a great way to share with each other and get to know other tools that are out there. So I'm going to check in. Anybody have some tools that they rely on that they love? You want to share with us? Let me know in the questions bar. Okay, nothing so far, but I will check back. Okay, so then I want to talk about collecting payments. Now, this is sometimes a hard part of being a linguist. We're not accountants, and most of us don't love that money conversation. So what you want to do, and again, fortunately, you've been a professional. When you first started working with this client, you had this negotiation happen. You feel good about the rate that you agreed on. So that's good. But what you want to make sure is, because I've had people work on projects and then months later they say, oh, I never got paid for this. And I realized, well, you never invoiced me for this. And if you're going to be a supplier, you have to be familiar with how to send an invoice and understand that this is part of your customer service as well. Invoicing is just as much part of your system as doing the project. So usually I recommend sending as soon as you deliver the project, either right then or that Friday. Create an invoice and send it to your client. And there are so many templates out there. You can just even go to Microsoft Office and go through a template. We have a template we use. We also use FreshBooks. Again, FreshBooks is it's an online accounting tool, and it's a great way to send invoices and once you get the payment, to track the payment in FreshBooks. And you can also set things up with FreshBooks. This is my plug for FreshBooks. They're not paying me, I promise. But they do make it really easy to work with. And there's other tools like FreshBooks. So find a tool that really speaks to you. QuickBooks is another one, QuickBooks Online. But the cool thing is you want to give your clients getting paid is really what we're doing. So you want to make it as seamless and easy for your client to pay you as you possibly can. Make sure your invoice includes all the information about the assignment you did. You can set up a lot of these online invoices to take credit cards, which is really great, especially for some of your direct clients. Like if you're going to be translating for a newspaper or e-zine or something like that, a lot of times they'll just want to pay you with a credit card. It's so easy to have that set up now. Set up a PayPal account, you can use Stripe or other methods to take credit cards. And so sometimes you can get paid, right away, right after you deliver the project. And that feels really good. So just, make sure that collecting payments, that's not your client's responsibility to pay you. That is your responsibility as a business owner to collect the payments. follow up. If you set, your payment, and that's payment terms should be something you set up when you onboard with the client. So when, what can I expect? Like, what are your payment cycles? If a client says, well, they're 45 days, which is becoming really common. Okay, well, 45 days. So you set your invoice net 45 days. And on the 45th day, if you haven't received a payment yet, check in with the client. Hey, haven't received this, So it's perfectly reasonable to do, and a perfectly professional way to run your business is to track your payments in and out. So I highly recommend getting a good system for that and using online tools to help you out. Okay, awesome. We're doing great on time too. So get feedback is almost better than getting the money, which sounds kind of funny, but really your goal isn't just doing that one project and getting paid for that one project, but it's delighting a client and helping that client work with you easily so that they want to come back again and again and again. That's how you stay busy as a linguist. And sometimes all you need are 4 or 5 clients that just love working with you, and you've got your own freelance language business. So, really this is really a formula, and it works great. I've been doing it for 5 years almost now, and I have clients that I've been working with since day one. But one of the best payments I get, sometimes it isn't the money around the project, it's the feedback. So one thing I recommend, either just send a quick email at the end when you deliver the project. Sometimes when I send an invoice, I attach a little questionnaire to the invoice, or, just a casual conversation. But find out, 1, how did I do? 2, this is a big one that really gives you a lot of insight. Would you work with me again? And why or why not? And you have to be ready. Like, don't be defensive. Be open to the feedback. It's going to help you improve. Maybe you really botched it for a certain client. You maybe accepted an assignment that was technically a little out of your skill set. Well, get that feedback from them. Help improve for the next one. Or, it helps you also know what your limits are as a linguist. But the cool thing is, if you can get a referral recommendation or quote from a client you work with that you can use on your website, your LinkedIn profile, or whatever you use to market yourself. So that's where the payment is, because again, and the other thing you can ask this client is, do you know anyone else who might be able to use my service as a Portuguese translator? So that's a huge question you can ask too as part of your little survey that you want to give them, because that is going to be your best way of building your business, is word of mouth, referrals, and delighting your clients. So that's my little dirty secret for building your business. But yeah, get a quote. In conclusion, I put this little flowery picture because I guess I'm in my heart wanting it to be spring, and it's still pretty gloomy. But whether it is your full-time job or work you do on the side, you are an entrepreneur. If you have a freelance language business, you're an entrepreneur or a linguapreneur. I made up that word, but I like it. So as such, you want to define a process for all your client interactions at every stage. Operate your business with a focus on your client and the delivery. Quality delivery, I should say, and then watch your business grow. See, these flowers are getting watered. So that's my conclusion. Do you guys have any other questions? I'm going to check in here. Okay, what about payment by PayPal? PayPal is a great way to receive payments, and really slick, really easy. PayPal will take a cut. That's the only risks of these online systems, but a lot of your clients will, appreciate using PayPal. It works out really well for smaller projects, or if you have overseas and you don't want to deal with money exchanging and things like that. If you have clients that are overseas, PayPal is a great way to handle that. But yeah, they do take a pretty good cut. So, you know, you might research other ways of taking credit cards as well as PayPal, but it's an absolutely great way, and I use it all the time to pay people. Okay, another question. WordFast. WordFast, yeah, we have at least one client who loves WordFast, and I think it costs a little, it's free up to a certain point. So I think it's a really good tool if you're starting out as a translator, because it does give you that bilingual format where you have English column, your source column, and it does handle memories pretty well. And it's free to use under a certain word count. So, you know, it has some limitations. It's a little older of a software. I have mixed feelings about it, but I think, you know, if you're starting out and you need a computer aided translation tool, WordFast is a nice way to go. I won't lie. And I have some users who spent a little time learning it and actually kind of like it. So there you go. I'm not officially formally recommending it, but I think, you know, there are definitely, it's definitely worth looking at, especially because the cost is right. The problem is if you get to a certain, volume, then it does cost, and then it's kind of a significant cost. So I think it could be one of in your toolkit. Okay, cool. All right, great questions, you guys. I just geek out talking about this stuff. So, all right, well, I want to end today's presentation with an offer to you guys. And this is something I'm really, really excited about for 2016. For those that are really serious about building their freelance business, I'm going to be opening through my link a freelance linguist incubator. And I don't know if you've heard the word incubator. I think of the little eggs and the chickens, and they, you know, but really it's basically a group. Will be a group that we work on our business skills together. And I'm specifically going to help you with your specific needs on building your client base and building your freelance business. And so we're just starting this out in 2016. And I'm really, really excited about doing this. We're trying to keep the fees reasonable because we know, you know, the pressures of being in a translation business, but I guarantee, I want to say the word guarantee, that by doing this, you're going to more than get your investment back. So what we're going to offer, what you're going to get with our incubator is getting support from experienced mentors. You're going to get help with promotion, marketing yourself. You'll get access to a lot more training, specifically some fundamentals in building your system beyond what we talked about today, but just step by step on how to build up a good system for your business, building your specialty, being radically clear about what you're here to do and how you're here to connect and attract those clients to you, because you're known for a specific content, and then you're going to love all the work that you get. And we'll have a training class on what you should charge, what your rates should be. That comes up all the time. And so this is an example of some of the training, but we'll have a lot more than that. And just, you know, basically I'll have a Slack group, which is it's a chat application, kind of like a Skype. But the cool thing with Slack is we'll be able to interact with mentors, experienced people that have successfully built a business. You can ask specific questions. They'll also have a technical group where you can ask technical questions about if you get stuck using a project or at any stage in the workflow. So it really just is a way to get support for your freelance business, and you'll feel like more part of a team. So anyway, I just really highly want to recommend this to you. We're just getting off the ground, but I think I'm really excited about it. So just go to this website. You can either just, if you're ready to go, buy it now, or just sign the form, and then would love to set up time to talk to you specifically about your needs and how we can help you out. So check out the incubator.mylinkresources.com. and really excited to help you guys grow. Not only, you know, if we get requests for projects, it's great to have people that I know I can count on, but also I'm really interested in helping you attract and find those clients that you want to work with and build your own practice as a freelance linguist. So that is our presentation today. One last check-in. Any other? There's a big question about what's the best tool in translation. I cannot answer that question because there are so many different things out there like I said, we use WordBee for our computer-aided translation tool. I love it because it's cloud-based, so I can actually assign projects using it to linguists who may or may not have their own computer-aided translation tool. But yeah, we can definitely talk about, you know, if you have specific content, specific projects, there might be a tool that just really works great for you. So we should definitely talk about that. That would be a great topic in our incubator discussion. Cool. Any other thoughts or comments or anything? You guys, I think the live hangout worked out really well. So we will still have our free mentoring sessions every month. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you on the incubator as well. And excited to work with you on that. So we will wrap it up for today, but thank you again for your time. And thanks to those that are listening to this recording. And we'll look forward to working with you in the future. Have a great rest of your day and stay dry. It's really, if you're in the Northwest, pretty rainy. All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.